right, so welcome, Bronwyn. I'm so excited to have you here because your life is pretty amazing, and there's a lot of people that are really going to be able to relate to your story, and I think you're going to really be able to help a lot of them coming from the missionary background, but also that you were trained in ITR with that in mind of helping the mission that your family works with. So, would you just give a little bit of your background and then what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I grew up as a missionary kid in Ukraine in a very small village outside of Kiev, and I'm the second of 8 kids. And I moved to the US when I was 18, so I spent the majority of my life overseas. And I came to the States for college, culture shock, went in for modern music, switched to creative leadership, started my business in the middle of pandemic doing illustration and design, and that's what I'm still doing now.
Cool. So you said you just went to visit your family in Romania. And could you give us a little idea of what people face when they do mission work?
Oh, that's a broad question. So many people do different things, but I know for my family, what they face a lot being American Western in Eastern culture is miscommunication. We come in, guns a-blazing, like we're gonna fix this country, we're gonna heal your nation, and they're like, what do you mean? Like we're happy, we're fine, we don't need that. So trying to slowly understand the people and how they work and just everything's different. But it is beautiful when there's two different cultures that don't understand each other. When you break everything down, the core is the same. So to be able to slowly break down all of our beliefs and ideals just to get to the heart, like that's when things have started to change.
So what did you find with that? Like, did you guys experience like trauma as a family when you went over there?
Well, I think I was too young to care. It was just all exciting for me. I think it was probably when I was 13, 14 that I started to realize that I was the outsider. And for most of my siblings, I think they felt that way. But we didn't entirely see that as a terrible thing because we just got really close with one another. And we still are, like, we're best friends, my whole family. It's unique. But I felt the effects catch up to me when I moved to the States. Like, oh, I don't know how to make friends or talk to these people as if they're not my family, you know? There just kind of was no boundaries, and I didn't know how to be an individual in the US. And, there's trauma in every family, but as a whole, I think we stuck together, and that saved a lot of us.
Well, I know that you and your family studied ITR to learn how to better serve
Mhm.
the women and children and families that are going through a lot of trauma and turmoil right now. And so you want to talk a little bit about that, of like how, you see it might be super helpful for missionaries to learn a little bit more about how to heal trauma with the people they're
Yeah.
serving.
Yeah, so starting it was I started ITR purely to understand what we were working with Ukrainian women for one of the charities, and I quickly realized that this was something that was super necessary for anyone that's trying to help other people in any capacity, just because you yourself need to be capable of loving yourself and being present to love other people. But yeah, I think something that most missionary kids would say, or missionaries, if they've grown up in that sphere, is that there's this unspoken expectation that you need to be a good representation of the work that your parents are doing. Like, what does it say if you're a missionary and you're helping people, but your kids are a mess? So, um, I think, yeah, it creates this emotional numbness, and you're sort of used to pretending to be perfect. So what I've found with ITR is that it's deeply healing for the Christian community, and that it's stripping away the shame that you have human experiences and human emotions, and that it's not unspiritual to go through healing and mental health and therapy and all of that. And I think there's just a lot of stigma. Even still, I think COVID kind of broke down that wall a little bit, but even now, like there's still some stigma that then among Christians, like you just need to pray and you'll get better. But ITR just gives you some really solid tools to step forward and say, like, no, I'm going to be a part of healing my mind and my body.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from the Christian community. They say, "Where's God in this?" And I say, well, if you're break an arm or break a leg, you go and you get set and then you
Yeah.
pray. Like that's where God is in it. It's the same way, like because it's an organ, our brain's an
Yeah.
organ. Trauma just kind of like, it's a brain injury, basically, is how
Hmm.
we see it. And it's a brain injury that can be treated. Like you just have to kind of reset the brain, and then there's plenty of things that prayer will obviously it's key for everything, but for that, like take care of it first and then pray instead of feeling like you're not good enough because you pray and you pray and you pray and you still get
Hmm.
triggered and you still get, all these things still happen to you because that's the way God made our brain.
Hmm.
That's a healthy brain. It's
Yeah.
working healthy. I noticed too when Dr. Gant and I went to Saddleback Church when they did their first conference called Mental Health in the Church. And we were shocked, like, of how many missionaries were speaking up about the traumas that they endured doing missionary work and that the church wasn't really equipping them to deal with it. Like they would be, especially the short-term missionaries, or like in one life and, working in an office somewhere, whatever, and then they go off into a third world country and traumas are going on left and right, extreme poverty, just things like that that affect them profoundly. And then there's not really a good debriefing when they get back. Did you find that?
So yeah, I did a YWAM DTS, and it was completely different than having grown up long-term missionary. And I thought it would be the same, but we went to Africa for 3 months, and I came back with so much trauma, not to diss YWAM, but I don't even think I realized I was traumatized. It took years until I finally realized, "Oh my god, I almost died, like, 6 times." And all the things that happened, none of it was okay. Um, so I don't blame the missionaries or people leading these things. It's just, like I said, I think a lack of awareness that your mental health is important and you can't just pray for your experiences to not affect you.
So would you recommend it to, missionaries and people leading mission trips and stuff like that to learn ITR and learn?
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that it's such a practical tool. I've like read a lot of books trying to heal my own trauma. I've tried different therapy or like BetterHelp or whatnot, and I never felt like I had measurable success. And through some of my own like traumatic experiences, I almost accidentally copied ITR. In my own unique way, I found that it really helped me organize and timestamp my experiences. So then studying ITR, it just made everything click. I was like, oh, that's why that helped. That's why this works. And to me, it feels like you're climbing up a ladder. And every time you do ITR, every time you do an externalized dialogue, you can look down and like see how far you've climbed up. So I think everyone should do that. I don't think you need to be a psychologist or a therapist to practice these things. It's just good things to do every day, I think.
That's a really important point because you're a layperson, you're not someone in the mental health field. and you studied with us. And did you, how was that experience for you?
But I wasn't expecting it. I thought everyone was kind of just, like, looking into it and didn't come from a health or, like, helping profession, and as everyone went around and said that they were a therapist or, like, in the field, I slowly realized, like, "Whoa, what am I doing here?" But everyone made me feel really welcome, and I felt like we all were learning something new, so it wasn't like I was super behind, and, oh, it was great. Everything made sense, it all clicked, I didn't feel like I needed to go take a course before taking ITR, I could just jump right in.
Well, I'll tell you, our trainer said that, you were fantastic. And they're like, she gets it, and I see that with a lot of lay people that are just, they have the heart to heal, so you'd have to have that coming in. But they get it because it makes sense. Do you feel that?
Yeah, it's not overcomplicated, no one's trying to shove, like, these fancy brain terms, and maybe neural pathways was a bit of a new phrase, but aside from that, it was all simple, understandable, like, "Yeah, I can do that. I can draw, I can make sure I'm grounded, I can talk to my feelings." It's all straightforward.
We have a web app that we're really hoping to get out there soon, is just a do it yourself mental health tool.
Mhm,
With some help, like we'll have some where people can reach out and have a technician who's like a layperson, or even a therapist if their traumas are a little bit more complicated. But so do you believe that people could really work on their own traumas depending on like their level of trauma? Do you see that that could be possible?
um, I know that I can because I've worked for a long time on being grounded. I think for people that don't have a concept of being grounded, if they're currently not grounded, doing that alone can I can see it being too triggering and without someone to help them, stay calm. But I think if you have a good grasp of what grounding is and you're practicing it, then, starting on the app, doing maybe not even more than 15, 30 minutes at a time, I can see that being useful.
Yeah, that's an important thing to stress, and that's like the level of dissociation. So
Mhm,
I look at trauma like if you have like 1 to 10, maybe the 1 to 4, the 1 to 5s, where you pretty much are able to, deal with the daily living activities, and you're grounded and you can make appointments, and you're, pretty
mhm,
pretty high functioning in the world. But you had like a surgery or a bad divorce or a death in the family or something like that. Where you could do your own work, or accidents a lot of
mhm,
times. But so we want it to be self-help with help. So if people, even if they get into it and they realize I kind of like someone to guide me right here, then they could just do that, kind of like TurboTax is the way I'm looking
yeah.
at it. Like I need someone right now to help me through this issue, that we can make that available for them. That's my vision. And also for people really to train missionaries and people that work in non-for-profits that don't have access to the
Mm,
Western medical model of, trauma therapy. They just don't, so
mhm,
even if they can get pieces of it and portions of it, and the idea of telling your story with a beginning, middle, and end from a past tense, third person perspective, I think even that can really help people a lot. So what would
yeah.
you say, and when you describe ITR, how do you describe it to people?
When I've asked people if I could practice on them or have them do it with me, I've found it's best not to over-explain. I I simply tell them usually, like, we're gonna do some art, we're gonna do some storytelling, we're gonna learn a little bit about the brain, and we're going to have a conversation with ourselves, and if we're honest through it all, it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be rewarding. But I try not to get too much into the details because the first time I did that, I could just see a mask of confusion over their face. So I have a presentation now that I made that's about 10 minutes that I take them through when we actually start a session, and that's been helpful.
Oh, fantastic. I'd love to hear that. That would be probably good for everyone. Maybe we could do a quick webinar for, people that are lay people that are like just really wanting to help. And I mean, we
Mhm,
also see it as assisting therapists, which I know you were looking into as well, of being, they have behavioral health technicians, so we just kind of switch it around to a certified trauma recovery technician.
mm,
And so, but it's that same idea of like being under a therapist, working at least in the States, because I know rules are different in different
mhm.
countries, but to really be able to assist the therapist since they're also booked. Most aren't even taking clients right now because they're just totally full.
I mean,
So
I guess
yeah,
that's a good thing that people are ready to do trauma work.
it is. And it's also a big burden on a lot of our mental health clinicians right now, So that idea of like we're looking at it as actually the medical model, but for mental health, where there's
Mm,
doctors, physicians, assistants, nurse practitioners, the people that take your vitals when you come in and so
yeah.
having that help. So there's a couple different levels there. So what do you think about that idea?
Um, I kinda got lost in the train of
Oh,
things you
okay.
were saying.
Well, just
The
just the
idea
idea
of
that where there's like doctors, but then there's also people that don't have an MD, but they're helping because they can
oh,
do
okay.
certain tasks. So
Right.
like as a technician, you can do certain tasks and you always have the clinician there
Mhm,
to, if something comes up or they kind of step in and out like doctors do, when
mhm.
they help people. At least that's like our hope to get in certain agencies and like law enforcement agencies or the first responder agencies, where they do usually have a clinician that they work with, but they can't always get that many people in there. And some of them's
Right.
work related experiences where a trained, a certified peer could walk them through the process.
Yeah. No, that would be cool. I mean, I think it's kind of already happening outside of the medical field, just people are desperate for that connection and just to be heard. And so I think with ITR, it's like, okay, you don't just have to be a sounding board. You don't just have to listen to people vent the same things over and over. You can actually get somewhere. And it's not going to take 6 years of school just to listen to someone professionally. Of course, that would be amazing. That's my goal, but that's not gonna happen right away. So I think any step that gets you involved in the process sooner with these tools is going to help people. It's going to change how I think I just realized that people think that there's, physical health and mental health, and ITR has really shown me that they're both connected. So if we have people that are helping, people in trauma, first responders, law enforcement, realizing that they can assess their mental state and their physical state together, then I think they'll be able to make smarter decisions quicker, faster. They can heal, jump back. I'm just rambling now, but
No, I
I
know what you mean. Yeah,
yeah, I think
absolutely.
it's so integrated into one another. And I I personally feel like I don't need to be able to diagnose someone to help somebody. And people love getting diagnoses, but I think people right now are more desperate just to function because they're all running on such highs and lows.
I think you're right for sure. What would you say to a client that's going through that, that up and down, and what would you say to them as far as encouraging them to try ITR?
Mm, well, right now, I've just I've focused more on trying to figure out if they're ready. Because some people, if they're not ready, they're just not ready. Even if they get to the externalized dialogues, like it's gonna be faked. So just asking them, do you want to feel more present? Do you want to feel more steady and grounded and have more control of your reactions and understand why your heart quickens when that happens and how you can slow it down, all these things. And some people actually don't like they like their stress. They like the energy it gives them and you can't force them. So finding out if they actually are tired of that and want to be present is my first step. And if there's a real hunger or desire just to be at a good steady pace, to be present and grounded, I'm like, yes, let's let's give you some tools so that you can stay present, so that you can stay grounded. And you can help the people around you stay present and grounded.
That's beautiful because wouldn't it be great if the whole world knew how to ground and they knew what that meant and they could catch themselves when they weren't? I mean, how different would the world be just if grounding was taught and reinforced all the time? Wouldn't that be awesome?
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much for your time. And is there anything you want to just say, like a last thing to say to our audience, which is a vast group of people?
I would say just to continue to have empathy for yourself and those around you. That's what ITR has helped me see is even the worst people, like we can connect to them because there's always pain. There's always some kind of suffering and yeah, none of us want that for one another. So yeah, just give yourself empathy and be aware that other people they feel the things you feel.
That's beautiful. Yes, we say it's not really black and white. It's not, victim and abuser. It's, so wound around, and you hear people's stories and that idea of not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
Mhm.
It's so powerful to see the world like that. Well, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you do and all the work that you continue to do in the field. So
Thanks
we
for
will
having me.
see you